What's up, everybody? I'm here with Joe Machi. I feel like the camera's right there.
That's the camera. Okay.
Yeah. I feel like the first time I saw your name, I thought it was Machi.
A lot of people think that.
M-A-C-H-I. What's that, Italian?
Yeah, it's like macchiato or Machiavelli. Yeah, the CH makes a K.
Macchiato. It's like my son's learning how to like read and spell now, so there's like little things like that. I have to be like, okay, that's gonna sound like a K for Machi.
Yeah, and it's like there's all these sounds we don't have letters for.
Yeah.
CH.
Yeah.
Why isn't there a J?
Yeah. Yeah. It would be Joe Mandy one time. You know Joe Mandy?
Yeah.
Yeah. He said, I don't know if it was a tweet, but he goes, the letters in the alphabet were randomly placed in that order. Sit on that for a minute. And then I was just like, I was almost like, ah, because I was like, imagine if it was like MQABHJY. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it is arbitrary. I know Joe Mandy well because there's been a number of occasions. Well, there's been 2 occasions where where he's gotten booked for gigs or I've gotten booked for gigs, and it was a mistake.
Because they thought you were them.
Yep, Joe 2 syllables. Mandy? Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, book them.
Yeah.
Tell everyone your website and social media and dates.
JoeMachi.com. My Twitter and is just Joe Machi, and my Facebook and Instagram are comedian Joe Machi, Machi. I've got St. Louis. I'm working at the Funny Bone the 14th through 16th, ladies. Valentine's Day.
Valentine's with Machi.
You got to come out. I mean, you wanna bring up the heat.
You know what I
mean? A little bit in that. It's gonna be like 9.5 weeks, and then at the end of the month, I'm at Buffalo Helium, the 26th through 29th. Yes, you heard right, 29th. It's a leap year.
I know, right?
Yeah, got that extra day of February.
Dude, I always am like, what the fuck? If you told me tomorrow, today's a Thursday. If you told me tomorrow's Sunday, I'd be like, okay.
That's
Do we even
true.
know if the 29th is anything? What are we even doing?
I don't know. If I don't have something I have to be at, there are times when I'm like, what day is it? And I've been off by like calendar. I've been off by like 3 days.
Yeah.
And day of the week 2.
Yeah.
That's hard to do.
Yeah.
It's hard to think it's Tuesday when it's Friday.
So if we didn't do leap year, in 40 years, January 1st would really be January 10th. So it's going to take a couple hundred years, but then eventually I guess what would happen is you'd be summertime in January.
Yeah.
So whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the right math. Noodle on that shit for a little bit. Do you remember where we met?
We met at the comic strip, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Doing late night after the regular shows where they would put the up-and-comers that they thought had some promise on.
Yes.
And those were good times.
And how long have you been doing comedy?
14 years now.
Okay, so 14 years. When we were doing that, I had been doing comedy 6 years or 5 years. So you were newer to it.
Yeah.
I had already been doing it. And what would happen is the comic strip, they'd have their show that was booked. I had just moved there, so they're like, oh, yeah, you can come do the late night, which is exactly what you said. You'd hang out, you'd wait, and then you could, like... I remember there were dudes on the early show showcasing from Montreal. I had already done Montreal, and I'm sitting there waiting. And I used to get so annoyed.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember? I would just sit there, and I would, like, try and write. I'm like, what am I doing? This is, like, crazy. And I like, as soon as I saw you, I'm like, this guy, I fell in love with your act.
Oh, I remember you were so nice to me. You and another comedian, Ryan Reese, were the first 2 working comics that paid any attention to me. And people are like, is it the hecklers? How do you do that? How do you stand up there? And I'm like, oh, no, it's getting anyone to care that is the hardest part of stand-up. Because you could be the funniest guy and move to New York or L.A., and it's going to be a couple of years now before you get...
Oh, yeah, for sure. I remember James Smith. Remember James?
So funny. The Australian.
Yeah, where is he now?
I think he's back in Australia.
Okay, yeah, that's what I think too. We met in 2005 doing Montreal. So when I moved to New York, I looked him up, and like he took me out, and he was like, it takes like 2 years to actually get settled. You know what I mean? I can't do an Australian accent.
That wasn't bad.
Thanks. And I left after a year and a half, so it didn't matter. But so I remember I moved back. You know what I mean? And this was like social media really wasn't happening. You know what I mean? I think Facebook had just started.
It was still...
Or Twitter had.
I was still hearing that Dane Cook story about opening up AOL Instant Messenger and having a ton of messages from random people, because that was the social media that he was doing, in MySpace and stuff like that. And
he tapped into that.
Yeah.
He would respond to every single person on MySpace and just blew that up.
That's crazy. And it just seems like every couple of years a social media platform becomes irrelevant. It's now to the point where I think even Facebook, it's mostly people's grandparents on that.
Well, like even on Facebook now, like you have a comedian page, you have like a performer page, and even when I make posts, right, it's not like it just goes to all those people.
No.
You have to like pay to promote to all those people, and you're like, I thought they were on here, and they're like, no, doesn't matter. It's not like Instagram where like, I don't know who gets what. It's all a lie.
Their algorithm, if you've got say you've got 10,000 fans, their algorithm is going to show it to 3,000 of those people if you're lucky.
And then try and get you to pay to do the rest.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I moved back to from New York, and then like I don't know if it was a late night set. You did a late night set before Last Comic or no?
I did the Tonight Late Night with Jimmy Fallon.
Yeah, that's what it was. And I remember like because Kate and I, there are some comedians that Kate knows that like she loves, and you're one of them.
Oh, thank you.
And it's not for Kate. It's not just on stage; it's off stage. You know what I mean? Like today, she goes, so you're recording today? I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna do a quick solo by myself, and then I go, I have a guest, and she's like, who? And I go, one of your favorite people in the world. And she goes, who? I go, Joe Machi. She goes, ah! Like she freaks out.
Oh,
dude.
Nice.
And I almost wasn't gonna tell her so that you could just show up and she'd be like, oh my god. But so then you were doing the Tonight Show, and I remember like freaking out. Do you remember? I think I reached out and emailed you or Facebooked you, and I was like, dude, I was so stoked to see you done that, and then doing Last Comic. So here's my question. Even watching you back then, you always have like a nervous energy that comes off just as part of, is that stage persona or is that real, or like what is going on? Because I feel like Last Comic, dude, is like
it's real. It's just heightened. It's heightened, especially back then when I was newer at comedy.
Yeah.
And I was so nervous doing the first late night spot, because that's telling the world that you've arrived.
Yeah, and you're doing Jimmy Fallon.
Yeah.
You know?
Because you know how it is. Sometimes it's harder to get. I'd say it's harder to get a middle booking at a club or to pass at a club than it is to get a late night spot.
Yeah.
But no one knows. Nobody in Pennsylvania knows that.
Yeah.
So it's the thing that legitimizes you in other people's eyes.
Yeah.
And I was super nervous, but Last Comic Standing, it's just a pressure cooker. You have to be there at 7 a.m. and you don't go home till 11, and you're mic'd the entire time. And it's a lot of just frustrating waiting.
Yeah.
And
it's a competition at the end of the day.
They want you to they want you to say, I'm funnier than this person. And I don't like doing any of that.
No.
But the thing is, even when you're nervous about something, and they'll tell you this in a therapy, like usually cognitive behavior therapy is exposing you to things you're nervous about time and time again until you tire yourself out from being nervous. You can get used to being nervous to where you're not nervous. And by the end of Last Comic Standing, Keenan Ivory Wayans actually said, like, I think you pull one over on me. You were playing a character. And I was just like, no, I've done this. This is like the 7th time I've been in a theater taping this show.
Yeah.
You can't have the same nerves you had on day one.
No. How many sets did you do?
I think I did 6 sets. But
and
then
how long was each one?
5 minutes, which in a 3-month period to get 6 5-minute sets approved for television, that was the hard part. It wasn't the material. It was the wrangling with their legal and business affairs team that to say, oh yeah, you can say that.
And then they only pull from each one of those 5-minute sets, like under a minute sometimes.
If you're lucky, yeah. There were some comedians who, I know.
How far did you go?
I finished 4th, so I got to the finals. 4th. You want to get top 5,
that's right?
Because
that's
where the tour is. Yeah, Rodman won that year. You want to get top 5 because then you get to go to the tour, and I feel like you got such an opportunity to learn the business that way.
Yeah.
And
it was you, Rodman,
Lachlan Patterson, Nikki Carr, and Rocky Laporte.
Rocky Laporte. Dude.
Rocky Laporte is he's one of those guys that knows all the tricks. He's like, Joe, this is a casino, so here's how you want to approach this.
Yeah.
You got to be bigger.
Joe, it's a casino, so.
Yeah.
I did one weekend with him, and I remember, like, I remember like getting booked to do the weekend. I was featuring, he was headlining, and a manager hitting me up and being like, "You're working with Rocky Laporte this weekend." Like this was a friend, not my manager, and they're like talking about how great he was, and I was like, I've never even heard of Rocky Laporte, and then I just watched him mold that audience into whatever he wanted right here, and like he was just like endearing and warm, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he's another dude who just like that simple life of being in Chicago, right?
Yeah.
Chicago, and he like lives there, and he's always around his family, and
It's tough to stay in people's minds and not be in New York and LA. It's probably a little easier than it used to be with social media, but still tough. And he's one of those guys to do it. And to loop back to how we met on Late Night, a lot of times you have to succeed in stand up, you almost have to push someone out.
yeah.
And at the clubs back then, it was a lot of people who had been doing it a while, and they were comfortable booking and they were familiar with. But the better show was the young guys doing Late Night.
Well, yeah, dude. I mean, right now at the Comedy Store, I see it. I'm like, I look at lineups when I put my veils in and I don't get spots. I look at the lineups and I'm like, okay. I'm like, and I'll see what time slot I normally get. I'm like, oh, I got bumped out. I'm getting if I don't keep doing stuff, that spot, I will lose that spot. You know what I mean? Like, I only get a certain amount of spots there anyway.
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh, okay. Like, I get it. You know what I mean?
Even with Netflix specials, and not to harp on anyone in particular, because I think there's a lot of great ones, but
Yeah.
sometimes when I see who got one, it's frustrating because, one, I would like one, so full disclosure, like, it's just,
Yeah.
I'm biased, I admit that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't necessarily think it's the funniest people.
Yeah.
It's the people who are known to the industry. Sometimes it's the safe choice.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
the proven name. And a lot of the times they're famous for other things. So
Yeah, there's no algorithm for who gets picked for that. That's for damn sure.
Right.
I mean, at least from my experience.
And in their defense, like, I don't mean to harp on anything, but it's
Yeah.
like that is a thankless job because people are going to be mad at you no matter
No matter
what.
what. Yeah, no, for sure. Damn, there was something I was going to ask you about last comic. Oh, dude, Rodman.
Mhm.
So I saw him. I did Montreal with him in 2005. I can't remember if he was on New Faces with me or if I just saw him at the festival.
Mhm.
And then I didn't see him. Like, I did not see him in LA for years. And then one night I'm doing like the old Improv Lab, which was like, it had this dark back row where you'd wait. And he's next to me and I go, Rodman. He's like, yeah. I'm like, dude. And I was like, I am such a huge fan, blah, blah. And he goes, yeah, man, I remember we met in Montreal. And so last night I was doing a show and so, there was a comedian and he was doing great. And I looked at someone, I'm like, you know who he reminds me of? And they go, who? I go, Rodman. Just like his cadence a little. And they're like, yeah. Because I wrote a joke one time that I thought would be hilarious for Rodman. And I'm going to give it to you right now as Rodman. And it was about going, like, being bald. Like, can you grow a full beard?
No.
Okay, yeah.
Very patchy.
Yeah.
Like patch here, patch here. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's bad.
So a lot of guys, you know, they can't, you know. And so I thought it'd be funny if Rodman was like, you know, I found out recently I'm going bald in my face. I'm going bald in my face. You know, I can't grow no hair over here, and I'm gonna be bald in the face. Okay, I can get hair over here, but I can't get hair. Oh, I get bald in the face, and that was my Rodman. This is a pretty good Rodman.
Yeah.
Thing.
Sometimes people would like, you know how people will sometimes write to you on social media,
Yeah.
and some of it's a compliment and some of it's an insult of someone else, and I hate that. And sometimes people would write, why does Rodman repeat stuff? And I'm like, he's doing what he should be doing because
That's his thing.
Plus, when you come up writing, telling jokes in a room full of drunk people, sometimes you repeat things out of necessity. Like, people harp on Chris Rock for that. And
Yeah.
it's like, well, he's coming up with a new idea, and he's asking people to think, and sometimes they're going to miss it if he doesn't say
it a couple times.
Yeah.
It's benefit. I mean, dude, I know there are times when I do stuff and I'm like, why'd they miss that? So then I'll repeat it, and then they laugh, and I'm like, oh, they just didn't either hear or weren't paying attention. But Rodman, you and I were talking about like uniqueness in comedy, and I think that was his way of seeing things as funny. You know what I mean? By repeating them and saying funny things, and then just saying it. Like, I do a joke about getting tuna tartare with stale crostinis, and I say crostini like 18 times, and then I'll go, I know what you guys are thinking. How many times is he going to say crostinis? And I think that's the funniest thing. And I only say it that many times just so I can say that And I just, it's maybe not the greatest joke in the world, but for me, it's funny because I'm almost like torturing them a little bit. I
Right.
get pleasure out of that sometimes.
Yeah.
It's not about like being funny. It's about making them have to listen to something that I'm going to say to see if they catch on. Like every time I say Christina, like, are they going to like get like, Jesus Christ, how many fucking times, dude?
There's a million ways to raise the tension, and that's
Yeah.
one of them. And I think it's sometimes I think joke writers like us will do better on a TV set than we might do in a club because there's people who are drunk, because they're not, maybe they got a free tickets and they're not that investment. Because I remember one time we were at the comic strip. I don't know if you were there that night, but Ben Bailey closed the show, and Ben is probably around 6'4".
Yeah, he's a big dude.
Big dude, and he's bald with a shaved head. And at the time, J.R. Ravitz was manager of the strip. He's about 5'8" and bald. And a guy was so drunk that he came out and he said to JR, "That was so funny." He thought JR was Ben Bailey. And it's like, that's sometimes what you're dealing with.
Yeah.
And when people are like, "Why did you repeat that so many times?" It's like, because these
like,
these
the guy's
guys
out
are
of
idiots.
My God, that's so crazy. Now, wait. When we met, you were working at remember you were in accounting, weren't you? At Comedy
I was working
Central?
in human resources.
Human resources.
Which is similar to accounting, because we would do the paperwork and the payroll for all the shows. So sometimes I get paid, like, say you were working on a show, I would say, "Oh, Jay Larson, I've got your," what they called a blue book.
Yeah.
At the time, and it was really cool to see people I know get work, but at the same time, it was just like, oh, damn, this is.
How long did you work there?
I worked there until I was a finalist on Last Comic Standing, until the summer of 14.
Wow.
So yeah, it's like I wanted to be a full-time comic, but people were like, "Why didn't you just go on the road after you did Late Night with Jimmy Fallon?" I'm like, "Oh, because nobody cares."
Yeah, dude. After I did Montreal, I quit my job.
Wow.
And then 2 months later, I went back and said, "Can I get that job back?" Because I couldn't. You're just like, what? You think things are going to open, and it's like, no. I always admired people like doing what you did, keeping that job. Jamie Kaler was a buddy, and he kept his job. He was on a TV show, and he kept bartending 1 day a week. He's like, "I'm just keeping it. You just never know."
Smart, yeah.
And I was like, man, that's like that. You know what that is? That's throwing pride away. Because for me, it was always a pride thing. No, I want to be a working comic. I'm a comedian. I was like, you know what? And it was like, I let pride get in the way so many times when it could have just been like, let me give you an example, dude. I golfed with these guys last week, and they are all older than me by 10 years, okay? All been working in this game for a long time. They all have kids in private school. And they're hustling to get in-town jobs because they know that minimal amount for a one-nighter in town adds up.
Yeah.
And they were still hustling. And I was like, dude, it just like opened my eyes to be like, wake up, dude. Guys that are like established and are paying for private schools aren't passing on these gigs. Who are you to pass on them?
Right.
You know what I mean?
That's where one of my beefs with a lot of younger comics right now is they'll complain they'll have jokes about, "Oh, I owe money for college and I'm a comedian," or "My rent's expensive." And I'm like, you're right, it is. And healthcare costs too much. You're not wrong. But you're telling people in the audience how unfair your life is when you're living your dream. And they're going to work every day. And like, you're doing this amazing thing that they can't even fathom. And to be like, this isn't fair that I'm doing this. And I'm like, well, maybe you should be driving Uber.
Do you look at it as a dream?
Um,
When did you know you wanted to be a stand-up?
When I was a little kid, I wanted to do it, but it was like tough to.
How? How did you? At what age?
Oh, my dad.
And who
had
were you
these,
watching? Oh, okay, your
My
dad.
dad had this tape, and I listened to it, and I was like,
Who was it?
it was Jack Benny, and it was
Jack Benny.
so dated now.
Yeah.
But it was so cool to hear it. Like, I didn't even know why people made fun of their mother-in-laws.
Yeah.
I didn't get it.
No.
But it was so cool that was a job.
Well, you didn't get anything.
Yeah.
As a kid, you just like. I remember the first time I heard sarcasm. My grandfather said something, and the whole room of adults laughed. And I just remember. I remember sitting on his lap, staring at his face blankly, being like, "What is everyone laughing at?"
Yeah.
Because it wasn't like, when you're young, everything's so literal, and this was sarcasm is not literal. It's this like, and so like, yeah, you probably listening. Like, what was your fascination?
I just the idea that you could come up with ideas and sit and talk to people, and they would listen to you and laugh. It was just so cool to me. And when I was in high school, I started to do some things at my youth group where you would get to perform.
Yeah.
And college, I did some open mics, and I was a real ham and egger.
You go to Penn State?
Yeah. It's just
ham and egger, dude. Jack Benny style, baby.
Yeah. You know how college town open mics, at the time, it was people doing Dave Matthews covers.
Yeah.
And, like, in between them setting it up and tearing down, the guy's like, Joe, come in, and we'll let you do 5 minutes. And it was just brutal and bad.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm never going to succeed doing that. But I don't want to go up there and talk about how hard my life is.
Yeah.
Because it's a pet peeve of mine. It's just people don't want to put the time in.
Yeah.
And then they want to complain about how hard it is. I'm like, well, I worked a full-time job. So it wasn't fun going to the comic strip and wait until 12:30 to maybe get 5 minutes, or maybe the guy before you walks the people.
Yeah. Well, first of all, when we would do it, the show would end and the audience would leave, and then anyone who wanted to stick around.
Yes.
And they basically are setting you up to be like, all right, do you want to see the people who aren't to the what they deemed the level of these other comics at that point, you know?
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
And then you had to like commute back. You were in Hoboken at the time?
Weehawken, yeah.
Weehawken. And then you had to commute back and then probably just to go to sleep and wake up in probably 5 hours to go to work.
Yeah, and I'm just like, if I'm, it's like raising a kid is probably harder than that, though.
Oh.
So I don't want to talk to them about, I don't know, it's a pet peeve because I know I'm harping on this a bit, but like sometimes people will be like, I just started doing comedy. Can I open for you?
Yeah.
I'm like, no.
Dude, you know what's crazy is like, I've only asked one comic if I could open for him. Only one. Everyone else, I was just like, I just assumed they would ask me.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And usually that's what happens.
I guess you would think, but I know now that I headline, I've had a number of people ask me, and I remember on a number of occasions, every one of them I was friends with, and I was like, yeah, man, if I can make it work, I'll make it work. Another one was like, I went and asked this dude, Caleb Sinem asked me if he could open for me in Portland. I was like, hell yeah, dude, I love that guy.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and so it was great, and I don't do enough dates where I'm like, yeah, I can bring, but I always, if I'm doing it now, I ask because I want to know what's going before me, and I want them to be in the same vein of comedy as me.
Right.
Not as much. It doesn't have to be the same topics. It doesn't have to be the same stuff. I just mean, like, you get what I mean. I don't really need to explain that.
I always say if you're doing a double feature, you don't show Basic Instinct and then Up, because one will ruin the other. And it's not that one is bad or one is good, although Up is much better than Basic Instinct. I think you can objectively say there's enough problems with the plot of Basic Instinct. But, like, it's not that one's better or worse. It's just that consistency in a show.
Yeah.
Like, if you see me and you're like, oh, that's an okay-looking dude, I wouldn't say he's ugly. But if you put Brad Pitt and then me, I'm gonna look a lot uglier.
Yeah, totally.
It matters a lot how you.
So
frame
tell
a
me
show.
how that whole Fallon thing came out.
I auditioned for Just for Laughs, and how I got that audition was Stand Up New York had auditions. I know they Dynasty Typewriter probably has nights,
Yeah.
but they do a ton of auditions all over the country. They are great about watching people, but I wasn't someone who wasn't. I had no agent, no contacts. All I knew was that the manager of Stand Up New York used to work at the comic strip, and I was like, hey, is there any way you can get me on this? And he's like, oh, they book it, but there might be a check spot.
Yeah.
So come in and I'll see if I can throw you on the check spot. And I did. And the guy who books it, Jeff Singer, went to the bathroom during the check spot, which is he had to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
I'm not upset or mad or angry. But his assistant watched me, and I did pretty good. And I guess he told him, and then he agreed to see me next year. So next year I got to do it, and
a year, dude.
Yeah. But, when you're younger in comedy, that's not that long. And
I know. I mean, I guess. It's just like, I just remember when I was like, when I was doing all that, I was just like, always like, now. How do I do it? To the point where I know for a fact I did Montreal way too early in my career.
You think so?
Yeah.
Okay.
3.5 years, dude. I was 3.5 years in, and I'm like.
But you got it.
I got it. You know, I just like, you know, I pushed and I was just like, no, I know. And I had good sets leading up to it, you know, and I think I did well. It was just like, I definitely could have grown from waiting a couple years. You know what I mean?
Right. I was 6 years in, and I thought it was a good time.
Yeah.
I do. That's an interesting thing that you bring up, because a lot of advice I got early on was don't let them see it too early.
Yeah.
And I thought that they have a point, but they're also, that's a bad trap to fall into, because I know some people are like, don't let them see it. I'm not ready to be seen by them.
Yeah.
And they're still saying that. Like 8 years later, it's like, I believe that if you bomb in an audition, they're probably not going to remember it all that much.
Yeah.
Unless you really go down in flames.
Or they have to have some knowledge of the business that you're going to get better. You know, I mean, who knows? I think whatever your path is going to be is your path is going to be. So. So then the next year you got it, and then you got Fallon?
Yeah, because it was the same people booking that. And he said, you know, maybe in 6 months we're going to have you on Fallon. And then someone dropped out. And he's like, can you do that set you did the other night on Fallon? And that was 9 days after I auditioned that I got to do Fallon. That's the crazy thing. It's like it's all because I bothered that one guy, did that check spot the year before, that opportunity.
But wait a minute. I'm just remembering this now. You brought a beer on stage.
Oh, that was on the Tonight Show. That was late night. Yeah, that was 6 months ago.
That was just 6 months ago?
Yeah, or no, that was a year ago. That was December.
Yeah.
Sorry. I don't know why I said 6 months. It was December of.
Yeah. What happened? How did that happen? Because you didn't mean to, right?
No, the booker was watching me. He's like, it's so funny that.
So funny, dude.
He's like, it's so funny that you always hold a beer in your hand. Do you want to do that on stage? And I'm like, I would love to do that. And he's like, great. And I was like, okay, cool. And then, so we decided to pretend that it was just going to be an accident that I had it in my hand. Because anything that looks like my problem with TV stand-up is it's so clean and polished.
Yeah.
And you don't get that sense that things are going wrong.
Yeah.
And that's the best part of comedy is when you're when you go to a show and you forget a line or someone shouts something out or drops a drink. It
variables.
There's what makes it so much more powerful is that this could go horribly wrong for you.
For sure.
And it's awkward for you, and it's horrible for that audience to see.
And there's also everything, like back to your last comic, everything's got to be pre-approved. Everything has to be ready. And there's no crowd interaction. Like when you're doing a set, if something's not the way you want, you'd be like, I get it, guys. And you can say something, you comment. But this is like, you have this amount of time. That's it. At a club, you can run the light if something comes up that you need to address. You know what I mean?
There's that ability to improvise that you just don't get on those shows. And there's the ability for things to go wrong that they're going to make the show better. It's a million people have been like, what happened with that beer? And I'm like, oh, good. It made people are like, that was something different on it.
So, what did you just said, like, go out with a beer.
Yeah. And I was like, oops, should have left that backstage. Anything different is good.
Yeah. Did you make you feel more comfortable, too? Because, like, you always perform that way?
Yeah. And usually not with a beer, usually with a soda water. There are times when I will drink, and I've made that mistake of going on stage too drunk.
Have you ever been drunk on stage for an hour?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. It's not... I've always gotten through it well.
Yeah.
But through the skin of my teeth, there's times where I'm like, did I repeat something?
Oh, yeah.
So now I'm very careful about it.
Yeah.
I think the last time I did it, I was in Tampa at Side Splitters, and they do 3 shows on a Saturday. I had like 1 beer the first show, maybe 2 the second.
Yeah.
And then in between the second and the third, I think someone bought me a couple of shots, and then I went up with a beer, and I was like, oh, I'm pretty tipsy right now.
For sure.
Yeah.
That was one thing I never did. First, I would never drink before shows. I'm like, I never wanted to have this idea that I had to have a drink before shows.
Smart.
And then I started like drinking, like I went through a phase where I was drinking Kettle One Citron on the rocks. That was like my drink of choice for like a year and a half, 2 years or something. And so I started getting to the point where I was like having one of those before I would go on, and I loved it. I was like loose and I was having fun. And then I was like, Jesus, what are we doing here? And then so I stopped that, and then it would just be like a beer. And now I haven't had a drink in 17 months.
Wow. At even not off stage, like in general?
At all.
Wow, cool.
So now I'm not like ever having a drink anywhere in my life, and it was just like it made me way more sharp. Even though I did a whole crowd work tour, had I stopped drinking at that point? I guess I had. And I think that's why I think that was an impetus to it too. 'Cause I'm like, well, if I'm gonna be doing crowd work for the entire hour, I need to be able to like be sharp and be quick and respond and like remember. You know what I mean?
You need all your senses to be at 100.
Dude. Yeah, dude.
I think that's what was the Friday late shows that they're hammered, and to get on their level, I thought I needed it, and I think it's a mistake because lately I've been doing without having a beer on the Friday late shows.
Yeah.
And it's the same. It's not any better or worse. I thought it was going to be better, but if it's going to be good, if they're going to listen, they're going to listen. If they're not,
Yeah.
it's not that I had a beer's fault or help,
Yeah. So I talk a lot on this podcast about like simple things. What are you doing? What are you doing when you're not doing comedy? You have any simple hobbies or things that you like to get into?
Yeah, believe it or not, not this January, but this past January, I caught this, of all people, Arnold Schwarzenegger's speech.
Uh-huh.
You ever that rabbit hole of YouTube where you start on one thing and
you don't know where you're going to end up.
Yeah, and he's saying do something for an hour in a day and imagine how good you'll be in a year. And I'm like, I might not be able to sit down for an hour and do something, but I'll do 15 minutes. So I'm like, I'm going to make sure I read for 15 minutes a day and play my guitar for 15 minutes. I hadn't picked up my guitar in a couple of years, and I played a lot in high school. And I've been doing that every day except for when I'm on the road because I don't bring my guitar.
Yeah.
And I read 8 books last year, and I play my guitar probably better than I played it in high school just because.
Dope.
Yeah, and sometimes I'll do it more because that 15 minutes, it's easy.
Yeah.
I think that's the problem. People make
it too big.
Make it too big, and then you're like, those first 4 days of January, you go to the gym for 2 hours. You're like, I can't sustain that, but do a little thing. And so I've been doing that a lot.
I fucking love it. So one of my life goals is to learn guitar.
Cool.
And lately I've been thinking about it. I'm like, could I just do it now, or do I have to? I always think like, oh, when I get to the point where I'm like retired, I can start like learning guitar. And I'm like, when do I do it? You know what I mean? Like, when could I just pick it up? And I imagine I never even, whoever looks at it like that, 15 minutes a day for an entire year. I mean, what does that give you? In a week, that gives you almost 2 hours a week. That's almost 100 hours. That's like, imagine that all year. You don't even think of it like that.
You'll know so much in a year just by playing 15 minutes. And with YouTube and the internet, there's so many resources that when I played in high school, I was buying books of tablature. And now you've got, like, I had to buy a guitar tuner.
Yeah.
And now you just go on the internet and type in guitar tuner, and they'll have it played for you. Yeah, there's apps for it. It's a great time to be a self-teacher.
Yeah, no shit.
Yeah.
Do you ever think of doing comedy guitar jokes?
I don't think so, but never say never.
Because you're a joke writer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm not a joke writer. I'm always a storyteller and like scenarios, but yours are jokes.
Yeah.
You know, which I feel lends to like music. You know.
It does, but I'm of the opinion, like, I've seen some guitar acts that are really great, and I've seen some where it's camouflage. Yeah. Where these jokes aren't that great, but I'm playing chords underneath them, and people are like, "Oh, this is weird," and they get into at a certain point they start laughing at how it's weird. Yeah. And like Kiss didn't wear makeup and platform shoes because the songs were great. And I just wanted to. I mean, I like World Without Heroes in Detroit Rock City, but as far as how successful they were, I want to have as little inflection in the joke, as little performance, just because it should be funny, just because you're saying it. Yeah. So I want less is more, in my opinion.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I gotta move. I gotta raise my voice. I gotta do faces. Like I look at Bargatze. And I'm just like, Jesus Christ, this guy's such a good writer.
Oh, man.
You know what I mean? Cadence and writing. Same with you. Your cadence is specific, and your writing's great. My writing is like, all right, what happened in the scenario, and then how do I make it funny? And that's why I have to, like, add to it. You know what I mean?
With that car where you got rear-ended, you made this 1 second thing into 5 minutes with all that stuff. Yeah. And I couldn't do that. Yeah. I'd be like, this person rear-ended me. And then one-liner, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah.
But where you act out how big your
I know,
windshield
that's-
is and how much she has to see, and you've only got this little mirror. I can see you. How can you not see
Yeah,
me?
totally. But that's what's like. That's what's great about it is that we all have different styles and different ways of going about it.
Can I bring in a Nate Bargatze story real quick?
Of course.
He did something that taught me a lot about comedy.
Uh-huh.
Capone was headlining Caroline's, and he canceled very last.
Who's Capone?
I don't know him personally.
Oh, okay.
He's a comedian, and he canceled pretty late. So I think maybe a day or two at most.
Uh-huh.
I think it was around Superstorm Sandy. That might have been why. And they threw together a show, and it was 5 quiet joke writers. I believe Adam Newman was on it.
Uh-huh.
Myself, and
Was Nate on it?
Nate was on it. He went last.
Uh-huh.
I went 4th, and I was the first guy to get some laughs because I felt like I pandered a little bit. I went a little more high energy,
Mm-hmm.
not what I would normally do. And then Nate went on after me, and he probably did about 20 minutes, and the first 5 he got nothing. No
Yeah.
laughs, just he's very quiet. And he just stayed in the pocket. And at one point he said, I know this isn't going so well, but I just want you to know I don't need this. Things are going really well for me. If you don't laugh, it's okay. And he just kept giving him a show.
Yeah.
And it just started to build. And by the end of his set, he was crushing.
Yeah, dude.
And I was like, oh, man, I feel like an asshole for pandering.
Oh.
You should bomb sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's if you play country to a rap audience, they're not going to like it, and that's fine.
Not even that. You could be the leading the all of Major League Baseball in hitting and have the most home runs and the most RBIs and be the number 3 hitter for the New York Yankees playing at home to a sellout crowd, and you can go 0 for 4 with 4 Ks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
You're just not doing it from. I feel like people look at like athletes as like, oh, you're playing a sport, whereas in comedy it's like you're being you.
Mm-hmm.
So like if you tank, you take it so personal.
Yeah.
Whereas baseball, you're like, oh, that guy was better than me, or I had an off day. You know what I mean? It's like you don't look at it that way. But yeah, you have to tank. You know what I mean? There's no way to. It's like right now with my kids, like the big problem with everyone saying like why you don't give your kids everything is because then what do they ever like? That's called being entitled and being spoiled, and we have to like tell the kids like, nah, you don't get that. That's just
right.
You're just not doing that. Sorry, or you're like not going to win every day. Not everything is always going to be the best way for you.
A lot of the kids that I grew up with that aren't doing so well in life, they had the rich parents that gave them everything, and it's not a great way to do it.
Dude, I was like, I coached baseball, didn't coach soccer, but like if one of the assistant there was 2 coaches, I was friends with both of them. If one day one was away and they're like, hey, would you like just work the sideline and like for substitutions? I go, yeah. My son's 5, right?
Right.
And there's a kid on the team who's really good. And he was out there and it was a free kick and he got right in front of the ball and another parent from the other team was like refereeing and she's like, back it up, you're not being kind.
Ooh.
And yeah, the kid took it super personal and started crying and ran off the field, and I had to like put someone else in, and so he's like crying to his mother, which was like he wasn't not being kind. He just was like he's a good player, and he was like, oh, he was just standing there, like just tell him to back up. That's all. And they don't know the rules. There's no throw-ins, right. So the kid's crying, and
he wasn't being mean.
No, he was not being
No.
mean. But he took it so personal. And then he was saying to his mom, like, she's like, you got to go back in the game, hon. And he's like, is she going to be in there? Is she going to be out there? And she's like, no, she's not going to be there. And she just kept telling him, we'll wait till she's not out there. Because they were like switching refs or whatever. And I'm sitting there and I have to do the substitutions. And finally I just go, hey, Jack, here's the deal, man. In life, she is going to be there. In your life, this is what I said to a 5-year-old. I go, in your life, she will be there. Don't wait till she's not there. You go in and you do what you need to do. You know you weren't being unkind. You know you're a good player. She's always going to be in the way in life. And the mother was like, yeah, honey.
Oh, nice.
I mean, they waited till she was out anyway, and then he went in. But I was just like, like we have not only do we not have to give people our kids stuff, but they also have to like see stuff and be like, yeah, I'm gonna go face it. So,
you gotta fail.
Yeah,
you gotta fail to get better.
Dude. What do you mean? What are you gonna do?
Yeah, in comedy, that's how you I tell people I failed so many times it doesn't hurt like it used to, and that's a great thing.
God, that's like a country song.
Yeah, when you can bomb hard and be like, look, there's some bad days.
Yeah.
You know, you just hope that you're moving upwards.
Yeah.
Your overall trajectory, because I remember when I would bomb on late night, I might not go for a week or two.
Yeah.
Because it felt so bad back then. But
yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Well, and you're sensitive, you're wide open, and you're like, what's your goal? I mean, when you started doing stand up, were you like, I just want to tour as a stand up? Do you like acting? Do you like write? I mean, what is it that you like the most?
I love doing the stand up. I love the performance.
Yeah.
I love the writing jokes. And I always tell people are like, do you want to be a sitcom actor or movies? I'm like, if I do that, that's great.
Yeah.
But my goal is to just be someone who can do stand-up as a full-time job.
Yeah.
Because a lot of that stuff you get picked for, and even if you're a good stand-up, you might not get picked for the special. You might not get picked.
Of course.
It might have everything to do with you. It might have nothing to do with you, and you can't control that. And I used to write goals. I'm like, do an hour special this year, and I'm like, oh, that's stupid.
Yeah.
The goal I should write is write an hour of good material, because I can't control that. And if I sit around getting mad or worrying that like this person didn't give me that, or at the end of the day that I'm just gonna be some bitter old guy wondering why the world passed me by, where it's like, hey, struggling as a stand-up and getting enough work to get by is not a bad life, and I got nothing to complain about.
No, for sure. It's definitely like, especially with so much community around stand-up.
Yeah.
Do you cook?
I cook simple things. Like, I can make spaghetti, and I can make steak and stuff like that.
How do you make your steak?
I put it in the broiler.
Yeah.
Just like that. Nothing fancy.
Do you have a grill?
I have a Foreman grill.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Because you don't have a. Do you have a?
I have a full-size kitchen.
But I mean, you don't have a deck. Do you have like an outdoor space? Yeah.
No, I
that's
wish.
tough in the city.
Yeah, you got to be rich to have that.
I mean, yeah. What are you see people when like in the city like have a little hibachi out on like the fire escape.
Yep.
And you're like, man, you're committed.
Yeah.
You really want that food on that hibachi.
It is nice though.
I'm sure.
Yeah. But yeah, I got my Foreman. I find they're great for grilled cheese. I know that's a weird thing for Foreman grills.
You're making like a panini, dude.
Yeah, exactly. But I keep it simple.
Yeah. How about that dude? I remember when the Foreman grill came out.
Yeah.
That's still cranking those out.
Still cranking those out, and they're still. I think it's a good idea.
You can't burn something on that.
No, I guess they offered it to Hulk Hogan, and he turned it down, and it was
no way.
Huge error. I might be wrong on that. I've heard that. I should look on that internet. I should look on it because now I feel bad.
Well, either way.
If I've made Hulk Hogan look bad in any way, I apologize.
Well, I'm looking at it differently. I thought George Foreman came up with that thing.
I don't think so. I might be wrong on that. But
no, dude. You better get this fact straight, because if this
he
isn't correct,
that,
I'm going to reach out.
If he has an electrical engineering degree that I don't know about, that he got in between the '68 Olympics and winning the world title and the Thriller, and that was.
Are you a big boxing fan?
I used to be. I'm not anymore. I don't follow football anymore because of the same reason. It's like I can't root for people when I know that they're getting brain damage, so I feel bad about it.
Yeah, I mean, football's crazy.
You know what bothers me the most?
What?
Is that I read an article about this Carnegie Mellon study that said it's the routine hits and the concussions, and I feel like
it's not like giant hits. It's just like the consistency of small little hits.
Yeah, they were saying colliding at the line. It's like being in a 20-mile-an-hour car wreck, and you might do that hundreds of times in a year, and it's
easy.
It's just the NFL. I feel it's a little bit like they're pushing it. It's the concussions. And it seems like it's more than that, at least what we know so far.
Yeah.
And they're like, we got the concussion protocol, and it seems like they're saying one thing when it might be more. There might be more to it than that.
Bro, I am gonna go on a limb and say they 100% know.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's just like, do you think Monsanto didn't know that they were killing people and just being like, well, it's more cost effective to just pay out the lawsuits than it is to like wipe the thing off the shelf? And it's the same thing with football. It's more cost effective to just like either wait and pay off like these class action or like create these things for these guys than it is to just like make it flag football.
Yeah, and it's if we can deny it for another decade, that's billions and billions of dollars we make every year.
Yeah.
But the thing that bothers me is it can happen to high school kids.
Oh yeah.
And then they get I always sometimes wonder. It's like how many people hit their wife because they played football,
Yeah.
and their brains are screwed up. I don't know. I mean, it's something to think about. I can't blame most of that on that, but
Yeah.
I'm sure it's happened. But I don't know. I know that's a negative tangent. I don't mean to.
No, not at all, dude. Because we talked a little bit about sports. Because you were a Pittsburgh guy. Pittsburgh?
Yeah, Pittsburgh Steelers, and I don't want to name. I don't want to. Yeah, I love the Pirates.
Yeah.
They don't spend any money. They need to.
They
get new
just
owners.
traded Starling Marte.
They did, and they got.
Isn't that guy a stud?
He's great. He's 31. He's got a team-friendly contract, and they got 2 guys who are 19.
Yeah.
So it's going to be years before they make an impact. And when you trade a guy who's that good, you expect to have at least a guy who can step in and play games next year.
Yeah. What level are those other 2 guys?
They're single A.
Oh,
So
man.
it's just.
Why do they try and move Marte so bad?
I don't know. I think the owners are like, we can make money without winning.
Yeah.
If we sell 1 million tickets or we sell 2 million tickets, we might make more money selling 1 million tickets paying nobody.
Yeah.
So I almost feel like if the Major League Baseball isn't going to get a salary cap, they need to get a salary minimum to prevent that kind of nonsense.
Yeah, no kidding. Because I remember when the guys traded McCutchen. I don't know what it is about the Pittsburgh Pirates, but they've always kind of had this soft spot for me.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was that Ken Burns documentary on baseball when they highlighted that. Was it 78 with was it Willie Stargell? Who when you guys won the World Series?
We Are Family,
Yeah,
that team? Yeah, that was 79.
79.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember in that documentary, they highlight what they call him. Was that Willie
Pops?
Stargell?
Yeah.
Pops. Yeah.
Yeah.
They I think it was grandfather or something
Yep.
like that. So I've always loved that team. And then when they built that new stadium, I've never been to it, but I've just seen it, and I remember being like, "Oh man, that's the most beautiful!" Like the bridges in the background.
Oh, if you go to Pittsburgh, I've been lucky to go to baseball stadiums in a number of different
Yeah.
places, but it's the best. It's such a beautiful stadium, and what they've done with the little restaurants and bars around it's really cool. And then they close what's called the Clemente Bridge, Roberto Clemente,
Yeah.
and you walk across from downtown. It's gorgeous. It's so much fun. They got people playing the trumpet as you
Yeah,
cross the
dude.
bridge. It's such a great.
So they
atmosphere.
closed the whole bridge.
Close the whole bridge on game days
Oh,
to
that's
have
sick.
to get you to walk across the bridge, and it's
Yeah.
sometimes that's my favorite part is walking there and walking back.
Yeah, that's the best. In Fenway. Have you ever been to Fenway?
I've never been to Fenway yet.
Oh, dude,
I
are you
gotta
playing
go.
Boston this year?
I hope to. I played Laugh Boston once, and it was in the wintertime, so
Oh,
I
yeah.
missed out.
Yeah. You got to go back, and you
Yeah.
got to go to Fenway because it's
You're a
the
Boston
best.
guy, right?
Yeah,
Okay, right. That makes perfect sense.
it's the best, and that's
Yeah.
why I love small parks. Like San Diego has a great park. I haven't been to San Francisco, and then all it's kind of like this new thing. Like they're building smaller parks and being like, let's just why make them huge? Like college football stadiums are the biggest stadiums in the country. No pro sports sees many as Penn State. How many is that? 110?
110,000.
110,000.
It's crazy, and I've read articles that the attendance has started to drop a little bit in college football.
Yeah.
I feel bad because that's a big moneymaker for the other sports programs.
Yeah.
But it's insanity. I mean, the amount of when you have a night game in State College, the town I grew up in,
Yeah.
which is where Penn State is, you have people that have been tailgating since 8 in the morning.
Yeah, dude.
And then there's the game at 7:30 at night, and when you see people leaving that game, it is scary.
Yeah.
'Cause,
It's like a thriller video.
fatigue and booze, and you got a lot of these guys. They partied hard in college, and now they're back, but they're
Yeah.
not in game shape, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
And
totally.
it's not a great place to be.
Why did your parents live there? Did they work at the school?
No, my dad, my mom was a Catholic school teacher,
Mhm.
and you can do that job in a lot of different
Sure.
places. But my dad was the manager of department stores, and a lot of times it seems, because this happened with the supermarket where I worked, they transfer people after a few years. I don't know why they do that.
Yeah.
They want you in the company, but they want different people to go to different places all the time. So he was getting transferred a lot. So he ended up getting transferred to State College, and that was the last one. We ended up just staying there, and they kept.
What
kept him
department
there.
store?
It was. He worked for a bunch of different ones because they either got bought,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. And the last one was called GB's, which was. It stood for Glasser Brothers, these people that own the chain.
Uh-huh.
And there used to be a lot more mid-sized regional department stores, but Walmart really put an end to most of those, and Target.
Interesting.
And Then it became this store called Value City. They bought out that one. He just worked for that one after, he got hired to manage that one after that. So it was nice. I didn't have to move around as a kid.
Did he ever work at a Lazarus department store?
No, but he worked at, I think he worked at Horns, which ended up getting bought by Lazarus, which ended up getting bought by Federated.
Yeah.
So which was the Macy's chain, and
yeah.
like, so it's like kinda, you know.
So that book right there.
Mm-hmm.
This is my friend's dad. Oh, hold on. Sorry, you guys.
I remember that they had kind of an opulent store in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
Anyway.
I screwed it up.
Look at the name.
Robert Lazarus.
Yeah. It's my buddy's dad.
Oh, wow. So he started that business?
No, my friend's dad, his grandfather or uncles started it.
Oh.
They started they sold horse saddles in Ohio in like the late 1700s. And they were like doing leather goods, you know what I mean? And then just built and built and built until they had department stores.
Oh, right.
So it was in his family forever. And then his family created Federated, which like was a conglomerate. And then they got bought by Macy's or something like that.
Yep.
Crazy.
It's crazy how it's kind of like stand-up in a way. You know, when you started and people would be like, oh, that's cool, but you kind of got that sense that they're rolling their eyes a little bit.
Yeah.
It seems like a crazy thing.
Yeah.
And that's how everything starts small. Every big idea started in a garage or in a bedroom because they hated their regular job or, you know.
Yeah, of course. You have to find and that's the idea, back to the idea of like not spoiling people, because you got to get creative and come from nothing. Like if you want to try something, you don't need anything to do it, and you have to like let that pride down. I was talking about it on another one where a lot of times I just do this podcast solo, and I'm like, I'm not trying to hide anything. I'm in a garage right now. You know what I mean? I make it look like a studio, but we're in a garage. You know what I mean? And that's where Marin started.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like a lot of things start with someone just being like, that's why my image was always George Foreman was like, how do I make this little grill? And I thought George Foreman was just tinkering around, and now.
Oh, I hope I was right. I hope that, because I'd feel bad if I took that away from him.
Could you imagine?
Like if he was sitting there, soldering, and I'm like, he didn't do that. I'd feel kind of. I just thought that's how celebrities endorse things.
Yeah, no, of course. But that dude's crushed it. He must have got a percentage on that.
He does, and he seems like a genuinely nice dude.
Yeah.
He's one of the lucky ones in boxing, because you see what happened to Muhammad Ali, and you feel like, man, it's like, how are the other guys not walking around with?
Yeah, but that was Parkinson's. Was that Parkinson's directly from boxing?
I don't know. That's an interesting question. I don't know how much you could tell if.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? But I can't imagine it helped.
No, definitely not.
Because doesn't Michael J. Fox have Parkinson's?
That's true. Maybe it was all.
Some genetics, but again, getting.
I'm not an expert in it. I don't know.
No, I know.
I'm a comedian, and I'm making my way. Yeah, every day you get to be a comedian is good.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, don't you have bad days though? Are you able to keep that perspective?
I'm able to keep that perspective insofar as like nothing makes me want to stop. Be like, maybe it's time to hang them up. Maybe it's time to do. I'm not even close to that point. Could it happen in 10 years? Maybe, because one of the things that when you're being a comedian, especially in your 20s. That was a long time ago for me, but like when your friends from high school, they went to college and now they're getting married and now they're living in a nice home in the suburbs, and you still feel like you're the guy with the roommate and the shitty car, and you're like, everything seems so immediate that your failure seems so, I need to succeed right now and things got to be great. And that gets to you. But then you see like Jessica Kirson getting a special now, and Gary Gulman, who I think is one of the best.
Dude.
Finally getting some due off that last special when all the other specials were great. Like, it's weird how they got kind of not missed, because he was doing good. I mean, he was headlining clubs, but now he can sell out a club on a Tuesday.
Yeah, and he can do theaters. And Gary Gulman, that state abbreviation bit is like one of the greatest things. And I remember Gary, when I first started doing stand-up, him doing the Craig Kilborn when Craig Kilborn was doing Late, and I was doing this show at Dublin's, and I remember Gary Gulman came in, and he had just done Kilborn. Okay, because that tape's around like 5:36, and then he was coming, and remember him standing at the bar with I think his manager, and I remember just being like, how cool is that? You're leaving a taping of a TV show, probably went to dinner, and then you're coming to do a show that night, and I was just like, oh, that's the epitome. That's like the how cool is that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like after you did Found, did you go out to dinner? Did you do spots that night? What'd you do?
I went and watched it with a couple of my friends from college. It was so satisfying to like.
Where'd you watch it?
In Hoboken at their apartment, and it was so nice because they were such supportive friends.
Yeah.
You know, through the struggles. You know when you do those bringer shows, that first I could only do 2, I think, because you run out of people real quick.
Yeah, no kid.
And they came to those, and those were brutal. And then it was nice to have that moment. And the next day, I did an open mic at Stand Up New York, and when I signed up, there were 14 people, and when I got on stage, there were 2. And it was like one of those things where it's like, oh, this is
doing the Tonight Show.
Yes, this is or not the Late Night with Jimmy Fallon.
Yeah, okay.
It's like that's the epitome of stand up. It's like one day it's up and the next day it's down, but you just hope that over time, it's like the stock market.
But what did you do most recently? The one you did in December?
Oh, the one I did last December 4 last. It was I actually watched that at the Comedy Cellar.
Oh God, that's the best.
Yeah, it was just a fun night because Amy Schumer was there.
Yeah.
And Michael Che and Artie Lang was there.
Ugh.
And it felt like there were all these big stars, but everyone watched the set.
Yeah,
it was kind of cool, like because I'm not. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the coolest.
You feel like you're a real somebody.
Yeah.
Even though those guys are household names.
Yeah.
But,
I did Corden in November.
Oh, cool.
And my wife and I went early and went to lunch, and then went over, hung out, did Corden, and then we went home. We went home, put the kids to bed, like hung out, put the kids to bed. I'm pretty sure. I don't think we went out to dinner. And then I didn't even get to watch it. I was asleep by 10:30.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? It's what I'm saying is back then when I saw Gary, I'm like, oh, that's the best. And now it's just like I loved it. It was a different way to celebrate. You know what I mean? I also don't really have that like at the comp. I don't have a club like that here for me where people would go nuts that I was on. They'd just be like, "Oh, you're on? That's cool." You know what I mean? Like I just I'm a loner, dude. I'm a fucking lone wolf.
I think if I lived out here, I would be too. Just it's geography too.
Geography does get
everything
involved.
Is so hard to get to and so far away. And you can do 5 spots in New York without breaking a sweat, but here it's like I either just make it or I'm 2 hours early.
Yeah, I'm early for everything, dude.
I haven't figured out the traffic in the city yet. Like
I haven't. I don't care to. I just look at stuff and I'm like, all right, if they're like, Jay, you got to be here at 3, I'm like, can you see if they can do 2? And they're like, yeah, okay, you can do 2. I'm like, all right, perfect. And I leave at 1 no matter what. And if I'm early, I'll either get a coffee or I sit in my car or I go up early and I'm like, hey, I'm here. Can they see me now? You know what I mean? And they're usually like, you never know. But I cannot be late to things. I just can't.
Yeah, I get it. Especially when you're doing stand-up and they're like, where are you? It's the stress of that.
Oh, yeah.
Is not worth being late.
No, I want to go. I want to feel the room. I want to see the room. I want to see what people are talking about. Like last night I had a show and they were like, all right, yeah, call time's 8:30. Check in at like 8:30. Show's going to start between 8:45 and 9:15. And Kate was like traveling back and I was like, yo, I won't be able to get there till like 9:30. Is that still cool? And they're like, yeah, no problem. And I was like, okay, cool. Because otherwise I would have just been like, I'd have to cancel if they were like, well, can you try and get here by 9:50? I would be like, I can try, but it's not going to be worth like going crazy trying to I had to. My daughter was late the other day. We're trying to get to dance class, bro, and this chick's like high maintenance. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Like, we gotta go. We gotta go. And she's like, I need my slip. I'm like, you don't need anything. Let's go. And so I'm driving kind of fast. I got pulled over. I got a speeding ticket.
Oh, rats.
And my daughter the other day, she goes, remember when you got pulled over speeding there? And I'm like, yeah, I do. Leave me alone. She's always picking on me. Well, this is great, dude. Why don't you tell people one more time your website and dates, where they can find you on social media?
Sure. It's joemachi.com, spelled Machi, and I'm on Twitter at Joe Machi. Facebook and Instagram, it's comedian Joe Machi, and I got St. Louis, the Funny Bone coming up. I got Buffalo coming up. I got a whole bunch of other dates. I'm heading to Acme in Minneapolis. It's the first time I worked there.
Oh, dude, you're gonna love that.
I've heard it's one of the best,
Yeah.
so I'm really looking forward to that. Been wanting to try that for a while.
Yeah, and you'll be perfect there.
Thank you so much, and thanks for having me, Jay.
You got
I
it,
do
man.
appreciate
Love
it.
you, buddy. Great to have you.
One of the best guys in comedy from the moment I started.
See that? That's the truth right there.